nail artist, if you enjoy Draw and Paint with Your Regret on YouTube and you would like to show your support, you can find Cash App and Venmo information below. This channel is free to watch and learn from. If you like any of my art products, please go to mpbimage.com to purchase. If you purchase, make sure you leave a comment so my product maker know that you've purchased from the YouTube link. A sustained gesture. So we're going to start with that first. So getting down an envelope shape to start with, line gesture all of our objects within that envelope shape. And then we're going to think of this modified contour in a more sustainable way. So that's where the modified, I mean, the sustain gesture in a modified contour way. And this is where the modified contour come into play. So once again, we're not going to we are going to be able to lift our pen and our pencil. That's the only difference between a traditional and also how I'm teaching it, which is a non-traditional way. So we do want to make sure we understand that we do have the option to lift our pencil in our correct. The goal of this assignment is that I want students to focus on 3D form. So that means that we need to make sure that we are focusing on things that are happening in the inside of objects, also using cross contouring, whether it's wrapping lines, vertical lines together, so we can get an idea of objects looking more 3D in line form. Also with this assignment, because I went over different economies of line, I do want students to focus on, at very least, giving me 3 different types of lines. It could be a thick line, a thin line, it could be a light line, mid-tone line, and or a dark line. Those are things that I just want students to focus on with this exercise. So this is very important because technically a modified contour and contour drawings is what you take into your linear structure, which is more of a structure construction way of drawing to get objects a lot more accurate. I am going to talk about using a proportion box. I will stress proportion boxes more next week, and I probably will go a little bit more into details when it comes to perspective as well. So let me adjust myself so I can get started on the demo. So we are going to switch back over to our pencil. And I want to make sure that I'm getting down my envelope shape. So once again, if you need to draw out the overall shape around your object on your printed paper, definitely do that because that typically helps students with seeing the shape first that they know they need to get down. So I'm going to start with that. I want to make sure that um, I'm in the frame, and I also want to make sure that my envelope shape is quite light because I'm just using it to place my objects in the format of my paper. So if I get quiet, it's because I'm just paying attention. All right, so this is my envelope shape to start with. So I got that down. I got objects placed. I have a little bit of room if I need to break out of my envelope shape or if I need to go into my envelope shape. I'm going to lightly gesture the objects in. So remember, we want to use very simple shapes for enveloping. That's really all we're doing for enveloping. So I want to quickly get things down and I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to uh, just relationships, placements. That's very important. And make sure I'm placing this somewhat in the right spot. So for the squiggly um, cylinder, I'm just using some kind of straight line shapes. I'm basically using long rectangle prisms and just connecting them together, long rectangle shapes, and connecting them together. So once again, even my gesture needs to be pretty light because I have to build on top of it. So now that I have that down, I have my envelope shape down, my line gesture, and I also want to start with kind of sustaining and modifying the drawing. So the one thing that I want to do is talk about how to draw a circle. We do need a proportion box of width and height for our circle. And how I typically would get it down, I typically would use a skewer, but when I'm doing these very small demos, I just use my sheet of paper to kind of help me with it. So when we think about a circle, technically it is the same width and the same height. So I'm just going to use my gesture width and height. So I'm just taking a sheet of paper, I'm overlapping it to the best of my ability for where I want the width of my, or think where the width of my sphere is. So I'm just gonna mark my width length, and I'm also gonna mark it onto my drawing paper. So you can see my lines are getting a little bit darker right now. Because I want to make sure I have a different line type and also value for my proportion box. So what I can do for right now is I want to start with some kind of vertical lines, and that will give me a better idea as well. So I'm going to take this measurement that I just drew because I just want to make sure that this is pretty accurate to my width, and it feels pretty accurate to what I have so far. So right now I'm going to connect these two, and I'm using the bottom of my gesture. I'm going to use the same measurement to make sure I'm getting the same height. I'm just marking where I need it. And then I'm going to connect this line together. So right now I have a square because that's really all a circle is. It's a square. That's pretty much it. It's the same width and height. So now that I have that down, I want to draw in an X. So I'm taking a diagonal line from one corner to the next. Diagonal line from one corner to the next. I want to make sure I'm meeting my corners. And I'm going to draw a center line because we need to divide our square into half. So to the best of my ability, I just want to make sure that this side of the square and this side of the square is about even to the best of my ability. I'm going to divide it into fours. So now I have four smaller squares. And once again, this is important because we need our four parts. So we have this point, this point, this point, and this point. We need that because that's important to me. There, hopefully, come on, camera, you can do it. All right, that's a little bit better, still a little blurry, but we need these 4 points because we want to make sure that we're connecting those 4 points to help us with our circle. So hopefully my camera can. I'm trying to get it to focus on what I need to. The blur, I know what it is. It's because I'm drawing so light. The camera is struggling to see. All right. So once we have our 4 points that are here now, because I don't know if you can see, but I still have my gesture that's within the spots. I'm going to start at 1 point, right? And I want to start to curve at this point because I want to make sure that I'm not coming to a straight at the point. So I'm curving, and I'm going to use organizational lines. So there's two different lines. There's supporting lines, which are straight thin lines that you use for construction. Then there's organizational lines where for me, I use them more for curved lines within construction. So I'm taking this curved line. I want to meet my next point. Once again, take this curved line, meet my next point. As you can see, I'm holding my pencil in the tripod method because I have more control for my curves. Take that point. I want to curve from this point to the next point. This point, curve from this point to the next point. And then I want to stop. I want to look. And I'm looking in my computer screen because that kind of helps me see a little bit better than looking flat because I can't really see when I'm looking flat. What I can see is this side of my circle feels good. This side of my circle, I need to adjust this side of the curve because that's where it looks a little wonky to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just cleaning off my eraser and I'm just going to erase down to a ghost. It's always good to have those lines that are not 100% accurate there. There we go. Finally, I finally get it to clear out, and then I ended up getting a blur again. So we want to have those ghost lines there because because we have those wrong lines that are there, that helps us get to the right lines that we need. So I'm leaving that line as a ghost because I know, okay, I do not want to make the same mistake again. So I want to make sure that I'm curving, curving, curving to the next point. And then I want to look at my circle. It feels a little bit better, but I also know I need to bring it down just a little bit more. So I'm able to draw a line in between the two lines that I don't want. So I always tell my students, wrong lines are okay, because it's just helping you get to the right line. So now that I have that down, I feel I'm okay with what the lines are looking like as of right now. And I could always go back in and correct them even more. But right now, I think I'm in a decent spot for what the drawing is that I need for this circle. So the next thing I tend to do is move to the next object from here because we need to see where in relationship do this pyramid line up with the sphere. So as you can see, if we're looking at our sphere here, we know that the pyramid starts here in relationship to our sphere, and we also know the bottom of the pyramid start here in relationship to our sphere. Those are important marks because that's where we want to place this side plane of our pyramid. Another thing that I do want to talk about, and hopefully I can get this drawn out, is drawing through. So I'm going to do my best to draw through. So sometimes students they're like, I don't understand how to draw through. I don't envision it. I can't see what I'm seeing. So I'm just filling in the connections. I know this line is going to draw down. I know this line is going to go across. So I'm filling in the connections on the inside onto my print because that is going to help me with the drawing through when I actually draw on my paper. Also, this helped me for other connections as well. So if I know, okay, there is a bottom plane of the actual pyramid, and most of the time pyramids have a square at the bottom, at the base. So if I think about that logic in my head, that's what I want to do my best to draw out. So I'm just going to lightly gesture it onto the paper. I know there's a continuation of this side of the plane that's here. And the reason why I'm gesturing it because I just want to make sure I'm seeing it properly onto the paper. And I want to make sure that it's flat onto the paper. So what I'm seeing is this line probably needs to be more adjusted. And that flattens that bottom plane a little bit more. I'm going to gesture a line here because this is connecting to the bottom plane or the plane that I don't see. For this pyramid, and I don't know if I'm calling it the right geometric form, but for this pyramid, if we think about that center on it, in the center of the square that's in space, there should be some type of center line that goes up to the high point of the pyramid. So I'm trying to think of, I believe that's geometry. I get geometry visually. Mathematics, once you start to add numbers, I'm like, what are we doing? But if you're thinking of it, I believe in that way, that also helps with construction on some of these geometric forms. So if I have this kind of center line that moves up to my highest point, all of these planes are connecting together to that center line and they're meeting at that center line. So that's what I'm thinking about um as I'm drawing this pyramid. Once again, do I 100% know that that is the structure of this pyramid? No. It's a photo. But I can get to a pretty decent guess. Just thinking about the logic side of it. So now that I have that down, what I'm going to do is just draw some darker dash lines so I know that this is the inside of the pyramid. These are the lines that I need to draw on the inside. Um, so having this kind of early structure, once again, just kind of helps you with getting down the overall drawing of what you're seeing. So now that I have that, I have to transfer that onto my actual paper. So the first thing I want to do is start with where does the left plane of the pyramid start in relationship to my sphere. So I do see if I travel down this way for the bottom of the sphere, I do see that the bottom pyramid start here, it crosses there. And then I also see if I move at the top of my pyramid, I see that this side plane kind of crosses in this area here. So that means that I'm adjusting my gesture because I just want to make sure I'm getting things in the right spot. So now that I have that down, what I can do is do my best to gesture through the sphere. And I have issues with angles, so I just want to make sure I'm getting the right angle. I'm just taking my pencil and I'm just lining that angle up and I'm going to check it just to make sure that's the right angle. And when I do this, I just want to make sure technically you're supposed to lock your elbow, but because I'm drawing flat, I don't really have a whole lot of room to lock my elbow. So I'm just going to do my best not to bend my wrist as I start to move down. And I'm just correcting and checking. It feels pretty good and decent. Um, so this is going to be the starting point for um, my left plane of my pyramid. So once again, angles, taking my pencil and just lining it up just to make sure that I'm moving in the right angle. I do want to think about I do want to think about how tall the pyramid is in relationship to the sphere. And because I haven't gone into proportions into depth and proportion boxes into depth, that's something that we're doing next week. We're just going to use our eyesight to compare, okay, how tall something is in relationship to something else. Which that is pretty much comparison measuring, right? So I looked at my image and I was like, okay, this feels pretty good in relationship to this height in the sphere that I just drew down. So I have that. Um, and now I want to do my best to gesture or more of a sustained gesture when it comes to the left side of my pyramid. So what I'm doing is paying attention to this part. So this is my sphere, this is my negative space, and also the bottom of the pyramid in relationship to my squiggly cylinder. So I want to pay attention to that because I want to mark where I believe this squiggly cylinder start in relationship to my negative space. Because that's very important for me to place down. so I'm not um moving too far over and not paying attention to my spacing. So now that I have this down, I want to kind of gesture in where I feel like this pyramid ends. Pull this down. Let me see if we can get a comparison. Yeah. So this line that's here, I'm just doing my best to pay attention to it and make sure that I have decent spacing. And if you can see this mark that's here is where my squiggly cylinder is going to be placed. So I just want to make sure I have that marked in place that's there. I also have this corner connecting to my left side of my pyramid. So now that I got that down, I need to get in the other planar shifts that I'm seeing for my pyramid. And I'm going to do more of a sustained gesture of it just so I can get a visual of my construction before I lock the drawing in. So I want to get the side plane, side bottom plane angle. So I'm just taking my pencil, bringing it down. So I just want to make sure I'm getting the right angling. I'm going to double check my mark. And I want to make sure I'm not moving my pencil too much. It's saying I need to be a little bit more flatter. Yeah, I need to be more flatter. So you see how I'm correcting my angle. This was my first thought. This is what I'm thinking I'm correcting. And I'm going to check the new line that I just drew. Bringing it down. Say I need to come down a little bit more. Bring it down, line it up. And I think it's a line between the two. So I'm just going to ghost out this line and ghost out that line. And this is the line that I need. Then I want to do my best because on the actual photo, it doesn't really give me an end. It kind of does. It kind of does. Okay, so this is the end, and hopefully you can see that. Let me switch over to a pen. This is the end of the pyramid, right plane, and this is the line that I'm looking for that connection. So that kind of gives you a better idea of okay, what's happening for the connection of that right plane. So I want to make sure I'm just doing my best to pay attention to that. So this is the angling that I have. This is where I believe this ends. So I'm going to take this point, draw a line to this point. And then I'm going to double check and make sure that that is the depth that I want that plane to go in. I'm looking at it and I feel like I could come out just a little bit more. So I'm just going to push it out just a little bit more. So I'm using my eyesight to the best of my ability to compare my photo to my drawing. And that's how I'm kind of correcting myself. So looking and comparing what I could do, move this over. Because it's a gesture, I can move lines over. So the gesture is just the start of the drawing. So I'm looking, I'm comparing, and correcting to the best of my ability. So far, I believe this feels pretty good for what I can see and what I can compare. And I'm looking in my laptop computer just to see are they matching? And they're pretty close. I'm not saying that they're 100%, but they're pretty close, and I will take that. So now that I have that down, the next thing that I want to do is I want to get in this back plane, side black plane, and I want to connect these two lines together. So I once again want to think of a flat square at the bottom. So I just want to make sure I'm getting that bottom plane as flat as I possibly can. And then from here, I'm just modifying it. I'm sustaining it. I'm double checking. And it feels pretty good. I just need to move this line over just a bit from what I can see. And then I'm going to take this line and do my best to connect and adjust. So I still have room to modify this pyramid just in case I need to correct it some more. But I think I'm pretty close when it comes to my 3D form and construction of my period, my my pyramid. So um the next thing I would do from here, which just so I can eliminate me eating up too much of your drawing time, I would start this sphere the same way I started this circle. I would come in with a proportion box, and I'm just going to gesture in a proportion box. I would come in with a proportion box over my gesture, and I would make sure that I'm measuring the proportion box to make sure that it is a true square. That means the width and the height is the same. And then I would start with dividing that box into half, getting my 4 points, come in with a ghost gesture, and then start to correct my drawing for that sphere. Same thing for this smaller one. Once again, I would do the same tactic here, come in with a square over my gesture, just make sure the height and width is the same. I would divide it into half with my X in the center from one diagonal angle to the other. And then I would make sure I have my 4 parts and make sure my 4 um, squares are the same in width and height to the best of my ability. And then I'll come in with a gesture. Only reason I'm gesturing because my first gesture is very light. Then I'll start to connect with this point, this point, this point, and this point. So these two drawings are a lot more easier to do because you're just basically duplicating what you did with this circle for the rest of them. What may take a little bit more time is the squiggly cylinder. So because I have a gesture in already, and also because I have kind of an idea of where to place uh the first curve of the cylinder, I'm going to use a straight line segment to kind of get the placement of that overlapping because it overlaps my pyramid. And because I have a mark there, I have an idea where that overlaps. And then also I'm using my eyes to get this overlapping, but I marked it so I can still see, okay, how high do I need to go? And I kind of feel like I need to go higher than what I put down. And all of that is because you have issues with angles. Every time I put an angle down, it's never right until I correct it. So it needs to go a little bit higher in relationship to my pyramid. And then I want to use a straight line segment. I want to draw this diagonal down. I want to see the angling of this uh, sphere in relationship to my squiggly cylinder. I want to make sure I'm paying attention to my negative space. So I'm going to draw that same line. I want to make sure that the negative space is similar to the best of my ability. Because this is where I want to start with plugging in a gestured, it's more of an ellipse than a circle. Uh, and then I'm going to, once again, draw a straight line up. And technically this line overlaps a little bit higher with the pyramid. I'm gonna erase this line down to a ghost. This is where the cylinder begins to turn. So I'm gesturing and ghosting in um, that turn. So I'm connecting one cylinder to the next while it's moving into space. I'm using straight lines to do that. And I know that may sound crazy, but the straight lines just help me with construction, just getting in things a little bit more accurate, still double checking my angles. So I want to pay attention to also this negative space here, because that means that I probably need to bring this line down just a little bit lower. And let me erase out the line that I don't need so there's no confusion. I'm going to curve this area that's here. So I want to make sure that I kind of see that line and that curvature. And I want to make sure I'm paying attention because I don't have this circle in relationship to what I'm drawing, because technically if I drew in this circle, that would help me with placing where this circle needs to really be. And technically this circle needs to be moved over a little bit more. So you see how I'm drawing, but I'm correcting myself because everything is literally in relationship to everything when you're drawing. So if something needs to be moved over or if you have certain space in between, that's what you need to correct. So because I didn't draw um in this major circle, that means that I didn't have an idea of where to place this sphere. And what I can see is that this sphere needs to be moved over a little bit more for that to make sense to what I'm drawing. But you can kind of see how I went from an envelope shape, a line gesture, sustaining my objects with a sustained gesture, then I'm modifying it and adding form as well to the objects that I need to add form to that has planar shifts. When it comes to cross contouring, you always want to just, and for this actual assignment, you want to cross contour one object. That's all you're responsible for. Sometimes students will have more time and they'll cross contour everything. If you want to do that, you definitely can. You don't necessarily have to do that. So let's say I have the full construction of this cylinder down. Let's say that. Because right now I don't. I just have kind of like a sustained gesture that's moving into a modified contour drawing. When I want to cross contour it, I'm just taking, I can start with wrapping lines first. So I want to wrap around because I want to think of this as basically it is a cylinder, but I want to think of it as a cylinder as I'm wrapping. I want to make sure things are wrapping around properly. Then, because there's this kind of circle on the inside, I'm just gesturing that in for right now so we can see it. But technically, this will be a line that moves up and around and then down to where the turn of the cylinder is. And then up and down to the turn of the cylinder. And then this kind of diagonally up and down to the turn of the cylinder. Another diagonal line up and down to the turn of the cylinder. So see how we're starting to get form with our cross contouring, the dips and swells, the roundings. And also that lends into a little bit of planar shifts because this is a downward plane here. This is a top plane that's here. So that's how we were able to do that. typically most of the time students will cross contour their circle where they'll do rapid lines, rapid lines as well. And then you can start from your point, rapid lines. And I'm gesturing these lines just in case I need to change and or correct, move things around. Because right now I don't know if it's accurate or not. I'm just trying to place my lines in and meet points, right? And that's what you really want to do. So I'm still wrapping vertically and make sure I'm wrapping around. So when I feel like, okay, oh, come on. Okay. When I feel like, all right, these lines are accurate, then I start to darken them. And then I can kind of move into some line weight variation where it probably will be a little bit more fuzzier at the top, darker as we start to move down, a little bit more of a fuzz, and then it starts to get darker as we move under the sphere. Same thing, a little bit darker up here as well. So this is where I can kind of play with it, a little bit of line weight variation as well. Darker more in this area, a little bit fuzzier if we when we start to move around. Um, so we can play with a little bit of that line weight variation when we are doing that. Here, I went in a little bit too dark, but I need you to see how to do cross contouring first. Then we can think about having a light line, a mid-tone line, and then a dark line, right? Then you can think about, do I want that line to be a dark, thick line, or do I want that line to be a more thinner line, or a very light, thin line, or a light, if I can get my pencil to work, mid-tone, thick line, or a light, thick line, something of that nature. So you just want to make sure that you are thinking about your line weight variation as so, so I'm not digging into too much of your drawing time. Are there any questions on what you need to do for this project?
No, I think it makes sense. I think I might. I don't have a printout, so I'll do my best with the angles just based on my computer, like the reference on my computer. And then I guess the only other thing that's new is the modif or the cross contour lines, and I think I might struggle a little bit with knowing where to place those thicker versus thinner lines. Like I get the idea that those thicker or the darker lines are going to be what the I guess the part of the sphere that's closest to you, right? And then the lighter or fuzzier ones would be the parts of the sphere that's farther away. That's the basic idea, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's a basic idea. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. So
Yeah.
we can say a darker line for the outline of the sphere. Then we can say mid-tone lines to light lines for the inside of the sphere. Or we could say dark line for the outside line. As the line is moving away from you, it gets more mid-tone. As it gets closer to you, or I could say lighter, a little lighter, a little fuzzier. As it gets closer to you, it's probably more mid-tone. As it starts to tuck under the sphere, it'll be darker because technically, if we shine a light on this part of the sphere probably is not getting any type of light. Anything where an object and also a table meets, there's no light down there. So
Hmm.
that's why when we start to curve under, we'll get a little bit darker. And typically, for the most part, the outline of an object is going to be darker because that's the dominant shape and the dominant lines that a viewer probably would see and know and understand. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that does. That helps for sure.
yeah, all of your gesture lines light, all of your construction lines typically mid-tones. Outside lines would be darker if things are overlapping and are they're meeting another object, darker lines because they're up against each other. Or if they're overlapping, you want let's say this sphere to pop forward, and then we want this pyramid to push back, that means we will have probably darker lines in this area. And that's going to help with the pushing and pulling of space with using lines.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
and then don't overthink it because honestly, line, their economy of line, where to place them, that does take time to kind of understand
Hmm.
and practice with. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So while you're getting started, I'm going to type up some stuff in the chat as far as just some bullet points to kind of keep you on point of what you need to do, like starting with your envelope shape, line gesture, yada yada yada. So just in case if you're just kind of like